Hi everybody, it's me, Corey T, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you more depth and more detail and more reflection on how I manifested my specific person. About a year and a half ago, maybe more than that, I posted a video on my channel called How I Manifested My Specific Person, and it's my most viewed video. And since then, though, so much has happened and I've learnt so much, and I actually feel like a different person to the one that posted that video. I now teach things that I've learnt now that I didn't know then, that help people to not struggle so much on their journey like I actually did. And I hope that this video will give you some things to think about. And so I'm going to reflect on my state, the things that I was doing, why I was doing them, the things that were working, the things that created suffering for me, so that you can pick out the things that you want to focus on to make your journey to creating a relationship with a specific person or with someone new without suffering or struggling or thinking that you're a failure, because you're not. I mean, in essence, wherever you are on this journey, and I think actually everybody has to go through it in their own way anyway, wherever you are is where you're meant to be. I always say that because it's true. But I'm going to share with you some of my journey. I know a lot of you have resonated with my story, so hopefully I can help. So before I jump into this video, I just want to let you know that I've got a new course called Let Love In, which I'm so excited about. It starts on the 2nd of March and it's 5 weeks, and it's all about letting love in, because often we have blocks and resistance to letting love in that we don't even know are there. So in this 5-week course, we're going to be looking at what those blocks might be, but we're going to be focusing on forward-facing narrative transformation, where you'll be in a group of other people who are doing the same thing, and you'll be changing the story but keeping yourself there so that you don't go back and slip back into the old one. And you will inevitably, but the group is there to support you to get back on track, to creating, really embedding the new behaviours and neural pathways that will help you to stay in the new story of who you are in relationships, so that the people in your life can meet you there. So if you would like some more information about that, you can find information and book a space in the link below. Right, so some context for how we met. 9 years ago, I was working in a language school, and I was kind of just doing lots of bits and bobs in the school. I was doing activity leading, I was doing reception, I was doing printing, giving students messages, I was doing all sorts of things. And then Johnny turned up as a new teacher, and I was like, oh my God, who is that? And I really remember the first day that I saw him, and I was like, who is that? And all the girls on reception noticed my reaction to this new teacher, and they were kind of taking the mick out of me. So we met because one day I had to go and give a message to his students while he was teaching. And so that's where we first kind of communicated. And it was like this instant, like, who are you? Whoa. I'm attracted to you, you're attracted to me. And it led to a series of events and nights and closeness and oh my God, what is this connection that went on for months and months and months, but it wasn't the right time because he actually was with someone else at the time, and it was so frustrating. And I tried to just keep my distance and stay away. And I was sure that they were going to break up. I just did not think that he was going to end up with her. And I wanted to shake him and say, why are you not with me? And looking back, I was just desperately seeking validation, wanting comfort outside of me, had really low self-worth, and didn't feel like it was possible for me to have the relationship that I wanted. And anyway, I did back off, and they did break up. And I had thought that, of course, when they broke up, he was just going to come right back to me. And actually, he did message me straight away and told me that they'd broken up. But nothing happened. We didn't end up together, and I was devastated. And looking back, one of the main reasons why we didn't end up together then was, number one, because we weren't ready. He wasn't ready. He was going through a lot of emotional stuff himself. And also, it would have meant one of us having to sacrifice way too much. And relationships don't work when one of us has to sacrifice too much in order for it to work. So at that time, either he was going to have to leave his dream and his ambitions, or I was going to have to leave my very good job that I had at the time. So I got a job as a social media specialist and was really enjoying it. And it wasn't going to work. We were living in different places. And he went off to Cambodia because he had this ambition to travel. And so it all felt like it had just totally fallen apart. And we didn't see each other for 4 years. And in those 4 years, honestly, I think that I actually thought about him every day. At some point every day, he crossed my mind. But I kind of just got used to this kind of thought of, well, it's not meant to be now. But I do think there's unfinished business. But in that time, let's just paint the picture of what his life was like. He was travelling around as an English teacher around the world, all these different countries, and I'd seen from a distance on social media he'd been with one girl for a year and a half, nearly 2 years. Then he was in another relationship, and it felt like he was with everyone but me. He wasn't contacting me, and I still thought that he would one day, until one day I did actually reach out to him about 2.5 or 3 years later. And we had this crazy conversation on Messenger where it was like, oh my God, I can't believe I still feel like this. And we told each other in that conversation that we loved each other, but nothing was going to happen because I was in Australia then. My job had moved me over to Australia, and I was a social media specialist, and I was having a really good time. And I couldn't sacrifice my job, my visa, everything. And he was working somewhere else. So again, it wasn't going to be the right time. And we just left it and let each other get on with our lives. And at one point we actually crossed paths to the point where he was in Bali with his girlfriend and I was in another island next to Bali, and we actually crossed paths on a boat. And it was just like, what the hell? We didn't see each other, we didn't even know, but later we realised that that's what had happened. And we were just in the same place, and we both thought about messaging each other, but we didn't because we were with other people and it just wouldn't have been right. So anyway, we let it go. Time passed. And by the way, during this time, I did not really know about conscious manifesting. I wasn't watching any of the videos. I hadn't seen the concept of manifesting a specific person. But actually, when I look back, I was thinking things like, I just really feel like we're going to meet again. I don't know when, but I just have a feeling that we will. And I would say to people, I know we're going to meet again. And it always felt like this unfinished thing, which I know lots of you can probably relate to. For the sake of time, I'm just going to cut the story short and say that at the end of 2018, we were in touch again, and we'd had lots of mini conversations that had never gone anywhere until the point where he actually asked me to go and visit him and his family in the Cotswolds. And I was like, oh my God, is this really going to happen? And I was like so nervous and really felt like, whoa, I've thought about this for years and now it's happening. And that's the thing, I had thought about it for years, imagined it for years, and then suddenly I was going to his family's house where we ended up being together. So we were officially actually together. But on some level, it actually felt to me to be too good to be true. And that's where my state was at the time. I was very nervous about losing him, very anxious. We were still living apart, and I just was so clutching and grasping. But the problem was with that relationship then at that time was that he had actually already accepted a job teaching in Ukraine. So he was going. So the relationship was already difficult before it even began because we knew we had this pressure. I was doing my master's degree, and this was very resonant for me and very familiar for me because my dad, when I was younger, was always away in different countries. And so, it makes sense why I had chosen someone who was always away and in different countries. And so in my mind, I was thinking, why can't he just be in one place? Why can't he just get a job in England? Why can't we just be here? And this is what I was wanting to create. Spoiler alert, that is now what has happened. He's got a job in England and he's in one place. I don't think I've ever experienced worse heartbreak in my whole life than when that relationship ended after only 2 months. And I had been so anxious about the relationship. I'd been so desperate for it to work. Been doing my master's degree, and he was living in Ukraine, and I was thinking, if we can just get through this time, how are we going to get through this time? All of these negative thoughts, like really needing it to work, and it kind of makes sense that it didn't, because I couldn't go on feeling like that, and I was absolutely devastated. And it wasn't long until, we broke up. I was absolutely gutted, and then he did find someone else not that long after, so that was really hard as well. But it was kind of like we just had to move on. And he said, just move on. I'm really sorry. But he said to me, I do believe that we'll be together in the future. But I was so hurt that I did not. I thought, I will not be with you again. My feelings were like, I just can't. I can't actually do that. I won't be able to forgive this. I won't be able to get over this. And so that was horrible, because all the sort of thoughts of hope that I'd had, all the, real aspirations of us being a couple that had something so special, felt like they just died. And even if I wanted to feel them, I couldn't, because I was so hurt. So I had to go through months of getting over that, which led me to actually going to Italy and spending time in Italy. And it led me to, this was before the time in Italy where I was like consciously manifesting him, but I went to go and find myself in Italy and had this connection with Italy long before. And I made some friends, and I got out of my depression and my heartbreak, and I started feeling like myself again. And I started being really empowered at uni. I did really well with my music. And I was just on a roll, so creative, so myself again. And I did have these little thoughts that made me think, I'm going to walk through his front door again. And I didn't know why I was thinking that, because I wasn't really ready to think that, but I did think that. And I thought, and I think that we're going to be together again. And I thought, why am I thinking that? Like, there was a part of me that was really conflicted about that, but there was definitely a truth in that I was thinking there's something else there. And yeah, it was a time where it was literally looked like, to me, like he wasn't thinking about me at all. Like he was with someone else. And as far as I knew, he was obsessed with someone else. And I didn't really care, because I was kind of like, well, that's over. And I felt sad about that, but it did feel like that was the truth, and I was going to find someone else. And I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was getting on with my life. And then I finished my master's degree. I was on such a high. A few months before I finished my master's, actually, he'd messaged me to say, I really miss you and I'm sorry for everything that happened. And I think about you a lot. And I ignored it. I just ignored it. I didn't know what to say. Wasn't ready to reply. Didn't know what to do. So I completely ignored it. And then 3 months later, he messaged me again the day I finished my master's and said the same thing. Like, I miss you and I'm so sorry, and losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. And I thought, right, okay, I'll give him the time of day. And we started speaking again and messaging again on Messenger. It felt like our whole entire relationship was on Messenger at that point. And I just again thought, like, you're still not ready. And I read back that conversation, and I was saying things like, you're not ready. I was defining it for him. I was saying, you're not ready. You'll always want to travel. I was writing the story for him. I was being defensive, because I was basically saying, you're not going to give me what I want. And I was saying it to him. I've literally read the messages and thought, oh my God, look what I was doing. I was telling him how he was feeling. So that was really interesting on reflection. Don't do that. Don't tell your specific person how they feel about you. Don't do that, because especially if you're telling them like how they feel about you and it isn't what you want. That's what I was doing. Anyway, after a few weeks of speaking, we thought maybe we should meet up. And I thought maybe we should meet up for one day. And that one day turned into 6 weeks. And it turned into 6 weeks because we were having such an amazing time. Maybe the most amazing time that we'd ever had in the whole time that we'd known each other. But guess what? The story repeated itself. We couldn't be together because he'd already taken a job in Korea. So before I even met him, I'd accepted the reality and thought I was fine with the reality that we weren't going to be together. I actually didn't even have an intention or an idea that we would be together. I thought we were just meeting up. But the thing is that he'd already taken this job in Korea. And in some way, that knowledge that he was going away actually kept me safe. And I consciously recognised that time that it was keeping me safe from being too close. So welcome the avoidant me that I didn't even know that I had, that was actually choosing situations that created distance so that I didn't have to actually be vulnerable. Didn't realise this at the time, have only realised it recently. It's a pretty big revelation. So anyway, he was already going to Korea, and then we had the most amazing 6 weeks ever, and I actually got pregnant in that time, and then unfortunately had a miscarriage. But it was all just really intense. Everything was really intense and really amazing, and we were like, why the hell are we not together? And he was like that and I was like that, but I was like, why are you going to Korea? Why are you going to Korea? Like, we're obviously supposed to be together. Just don't go to Korea. And I was hurt by the fact that he didn't change his plans for me. I wanted him to change his plans, but I still had a lot to learn. So now this is the part of the story where you guys probably know, where I went to Italy. So he went to Korea and I couldn't stop him. And I'd literally tried to, by this time I knew about conscious manifesting, right? I was watching all the videos obsessively. Every day I was watching the videos trying to stop him from going to Korea. I'm going to manifest him not going to Korea. That's what I thought. So I was literally obsessively doing that. It didn't work and he went to Korea. And I was really sad. And so for the first few weeks of him being in Korea, we were still very close. It felt like we were together, but we weren't. It felt like we were together, but we weren't. We were talking like a couple, like we were together. We were saying we loved each other. We were calling each other on video call. He would leave his camera on all day while I was asleep so that whenever I woke up in the morning, he would still be there. It was really intense. It just felt like we were absolutely together. But logically, it was very uncomfortable because we actually weren't. There was no label on us. There was no end point of when he was going to leave Korea. There was no idea of what was going to happen in the future. And I wasn't ready to say, I can't do this yet. So I went along with it for a while until I got to the point where I started to just feel really, really anxious. So I went along with it for a while. But in the meantime, I thought, I can't just sit here missing him, waiting for him to come back. And I decided to just go to Italy in 2020 when the pandemic was still on. And I just decided to take myself off to be isolated in Italy and take a job as a teacher myself. I was literally starting to copy him, thinking that if I was more like him, he would like me. And I honestly think that some part of me thought, if I can be more like him and less like me, he's more likely to want to be with me. And I know that I did that. So anyway, I went to Italy, which was my place. I wanted to go back to Italy. And I took a job that I absolutely hated. I hated being an English teacher. I hated it from day one. But anyway, I was enjoying the experience of being in Italy, speaking Italian, but I was thinking about him every day. Okay, so let's go to the bit where I talk about this focused time of about 7 to 9 months. Well, I was just thinking, I am going to manifest him. And we were still talking at this point, but it was horrible because we weren't together. Until the point where I started having all these anxious thoughts, like, what if he meets someone else? He's going to meet someone else. And then what am I going to do? That will be so disappointing. And we weren't together, so I couldn't stop him. I hadn't put any labels on it deliberately to not hurt myself from and be disappointed. And he had done the same thing. We had this weird, like, freedom thing where we were free to go and meet other people, but I didn't want that at all. I just didn't know what else to do. And so anyway, one day on Facebook, I saw that he'd put a picture of a Christmas cake on there, and for some reason the investigator in me zoomed in on the reindeer nose and saw that he was not on his own. And at that point I thought, right, enough is enough. There was a reflection in the reindeer nose of him sitting next to a girl on Christmas Day, and I thought, right, that's enough. That is enough of this weak boundary shit. And I rang him up and I said, I can't do this anymore. And you know the story. I said to him, I just see us as more than this. And I'm not going to keep pretending that I don't. And I'm not going to live as if I don't see you as more to me than what you're acting like at the moment and what I'm acting like. So I'm not going to do that anymore. You're too important to me for me to continue being okay with this situation that I'm not okay with. So I can't talk to you. I can't talk to you anymore. And just, you know, if anything changes in the future, then great. But if not, then it is what it is. And I just let it be and let it go. And he was like, but why can't I ring you? And I was like, no, you can't. You can't ring me. You can't ring me because I can't. It's too painful. It's not right. I don't even want to speak to you if you're seeing someone else. I'm not interested. Absolutely not interested. And decided that I didn't want to speak to him when he was seeing someone else, which he never admitted until much later. But I knew that he was seeing someone else. So anyway, probably like, if you want to think about it in terms of conscious creation, then probably I manifested it. Was it my fault? No. Was it meant to be? Yes, it was meant to be, as a part of my evolution, as a part of my learning, as a part of my growth. And thank God it happened, because I needed that time away from him. I needed the time to not speak to him. So in that time, I went all out on the videos. I was just watching all of the videos on YouTube. And one of the things that I was doing was writing hundreds of affirmations, and it was distracting my day and getting in the way of me actually teaching. Every time I was on my way to work, I would just be saying affirmations to myself of like, I'm loved, I'm chosen, I'm wanted. And actually, it just felt like nothing was actually going in. It was obsessive, absolutely, completely obsessive. I was in pain and doing everything I could to avoid that pain by thinking, if I get this thing, if I change myself, if I change who I am at my core, because obviously I'm not self-loving enough, and I'm not this enough, and I'm not that enough, and I'm just not enough. If I change, then I'm going to be able to manifest him, and then I'll feel better. It was all just totally backwards. So I was doing all these affirmations. I was doing meditations. I actually quite liked doing the meditations and visualizations. But I think, first of all, on reflection, that the obsessive affirmations were doing nothing for me. I think that was a part of my journey that I had to go through, but it burnt me out and nothing was happening. And I was sitting there waiting to see if he was going to message me, wondering if he was thinking about me, thinking all of these intense thoughts, feeling like we had this connection telepathically and that he was going to message me any minute. And it was just always disappointing. It just didn't happen. He wasn't messaging me. He was getting on with his life and not being stressed about me, and I was stressing about him, and it was just really sad. I feel so sorry for my past self who was going through that. I feel so sorry for her. Like, I sometimes just feel so emotional thinking about how painful that whole time was. You know, and I would go through these times of being really in pain and like missing him and deeply feeling like I was doing everything wrong because nothing was working. And I know lots of you can relate to that. And I was feeling like, you know, desperate to find the answer. Like, what's the answer to manifesting him? Watch another video, read another blog, look for another success story. Someone tell me what I'm doing wrong. I must be doing it wrong. And I literally remember saying to people, what am I doing wrong? And that's what so many people say, isn't it? And you've probably said that yourself, like, what am I doing wrong? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Actually, I mean, I was supposed to go through that bit of the journey, the pain, the obsession, and so is everybody else. And then you get to the point where you're just so burnt out with it. So I got burnt out with doing all the affirmations. I had like Post-it notes of affirmations and scenes like all over my house and on my bed. And things about him, it was all Johnny, 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 Johnny everywhere. Like, it was so me thinking that he was this pinnacle of happiness, and I was completely abandoning my own feelings. So one day I remember being like, I feel sick looking at all this stuff. I don't want to write another affirmation at all. And I'm just going to take off all of these Post-it notes. I didn't want to look at them anymore. And I just took them all down, and I felt relieved because I felt like, okay, I've got to do something for myself now. And this is where it changed, right? This is where it changed. When I started going out and speaking to people, and I started saying yes to social events. I started saying yes to meeting other people. I remember I went to a party, and this really funny, charming Italian guy was flirting with me so much that everyone found it hilarious, and I found it hilarious, and I was really sort of shy and like taken aback by it, but it was so fun. And I found a bit of myself that night where I was like, oh my God, there's life outside of this person that's causing me so much pain. And I went to this party and I really enjoyed the attention, and I was speaking Italian and everybody was encouraging me. It was just a really cool experience, my own experience, going from having no friends and speaking no Italian to like having friends and speaking some Italian badly, but you know, much better Italian than I had before. And going to the cafe, everybody recognizing me, starting to get to know a community. This is where I started changing. I started feeling like I'm going to be okay. I am okay. I'm going to be okay no matter what. And yes, I was thinking about him every day. I was doing meditations and And I was enjoying those meditations. I was doing self-love meditations and loads of inner child work. So these are the things that I actually think were beneficial. The inner child conversations that I had with my therapist, my coach, like all of those things that delved into why I was so obsessed with him, why I needed him so much, why I felt that he actually had something that I didn't. These started to sort of rip away the fantasy that he could give me something that I couldn't myself, that I couldn't myself. And so that was when I started going, oh my God, this has got to be me loving me. I've got to find myself. I've got to be the resource for my own love, and then things will be different. I was still kind of thinking, and then things will be different, so then he can come back. I was still doing that on some level. So anyway, that went on for a while, and I was doing the meditations, doing the self-love meditations, and I was doing all this stuff. I was still doing it with the focus of getting him, though. So it's really difficult to do, isn't it? Because you want something so much, but you also realise that you also want to heal yourself. And there's a bit of a transition where you start to flip from like needing that person to actually caring more about yourself. That's when it starts to change. And no, people don't want to get there, because that seems to be that in order to get there, you have to give up your desire. And in some ways that can be what it feels like, and that's why people are so resistant to it, but it isn't that. It's just giving up the need and the desperation for it, giving up the need for certainty that it's definitely going to happen, and that if it doesn't happen, you're not going to be okay, because you are going to be okay, like no matter what. And that's another turning point for me, was when I started thinking, I'm so sick of this that I actually care about myself more than him, and if we don't end up together, well then fine, I'd rather be happy. I just would rather be happy than struggle like I've struggled, and I don't want to go through that anymore, so I'd rather do that. The other thing that happened that was I thought was really magical was that I used to go to this lookout place and be with nature and get a coffee, and I used to go every day on my way to work, and I used to spend 30 minutes a day just thinking and imagining about things that I wanted to happen with me and him, or with me. I used to imagine like scenes and things that I wanted to happen, and I used to imagine him saying certain things, and in that 30 minutes every day I used to think, everything I think in this 30 minutes is just done. Everything I think. And I used to imagine him standing actually next to me there, and imagining that he was there. I used to do this kind of thing, like these living in the end sort of scenes, and I did one in the apartment where I imagined him being in the other room and me asking him for a coffee. I did ones where we did these hand photos where like my hand would be behind and it would be me holding his hand and that kind of thing. And I did one on a particular street. Long story short, all those things happened. So there is something to me that's magical about those things, where I'd imagined him standing next to me, I'd imagined him being in my apartment, I'd imagined us taking these specific photos, I'd lived it, I'd walked it, I'd imagined that it was happening now, and then it did. It months later it did. So and sorry, I'm there's so much of this story. Then what happened? So I was doing these things sort of on and off, but I was enjoying it. Like I wasn't attached to it. I wasn't worried about like when it was happened. But then what happened was I started actually getting really unhappy in Italy, and I was thinking, oh my God, this is so sad. And I started being in pain again because I actually wanted to leave Italy, but I didn't want to give up on my manifestation. I didn't want to give up on him coming to Italy and us being together in Italy. But I was feeling so unhappy that eventually I had to say, look, I give up. I'm going home. I have to put myself first. And like, okay, this didn't work. Oh well, like that's just life. And I was really sad about it, and I cried a lot. And that is when I was scrolling through the old text messages, feeling really sorry for myself, and then literally accidentally sent him that emoji of me going, you know those emojis on iPhone which like look like you? I just sent him one of me. You know, like after 6 months of silence, and I was like, oh no, and that led us to talking again. But I let him completely lead it because I didn't think that I was really ready to speak to him again at all. And he was leading the way. He was asking me questions, and I thought, if he doesn't continue asking me questions and seeming interested in this conversation, well, I will let it go, because I'm not going to chase him anymore. I'm just not going to do it. So I'd obviously come some way in that respect. And he did. He kept sort of asking me, how are you? Do you have a boyfriend now? Oh my God, why not? You're so amazing, and all this kind of stuff. And it was weird, but I was sort of like, no, I don't have a boyfriend. I've just literally been thinking about you for the whole time, you nutcase. And anyway, so we started talking, and then we started FaceTiming, and then I was going home and he was going home, and everything suddenly seemed like it was seamlessly falling into place. And we talked about, when I got back, we talked about meeting up again, and this is where my anxiety and my self-worth was still really low. I actually realized that I was saying things like I just, I don't know if this is gonna work, like, he's just going to let me down again, and I'm so sad, and if this doesn't work, what am I going to do? And I was still a bit dependent on it, and I got all anxious, so that old pattern of like needing him and stuff came back, and I was just nervous about the fact that I was nervous. But anyway, I kind of just let it all go and thought, well, if it doesn't happen this time, well, it might happen next time or the time after. I'm not attached to it happening now. And then suddenly, within 2 conversations, we had booked flights to go to Dubai together as a couple to work in a school in Dubai over the summer. And it was like, oh, so are we together now? And he was like, yeah, I'm gonna put it on Facebook. And we were just together. It was so suddenly crazy. But again, looking back, look what I had to do to get there. I had to do another job teaching English that I didn't like doing at all. And I wasn't really that up for going to Dubai, but it was kind of like, what else have I got going on in my life at the moment? Because I'd spent no time really focusing on my own life and my own destination and my own career goal. I hadn't done that at all in the time in Italy, and that's a mistake that I made. So when I got back from Italy, I kind of had nothing. I had to start again, and he was my only focus. So you see the problem that I had created by just having that isolated time. I mean, it was great, and I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all. But it meant that when I got back, still, I was actually quite dependent on him. So our relationship, we just went like this. We just became one, and we were just like doing everything together. And there was a nervousness within me, because I felt like on some level, like I had to adjust myself. And I knew, and actually felt bad at the time for doing it, that I was sacrificing. I was not trusting that if I hadn't done that, that he would have come for me, that he would have wanted to be with me, and that there was nothing I had to do in order for him to think that I was good enough. And I just wasn't there yet in terms of my own self-worth. But look, I wasn't healed, and we got back together. I wasn't healed, and we got back together. For everyone who thinks you need to be healed to get back together, well, it's not true. So I wasn't, and I went through lots of anxiety, because at the beginning of our relationship, I was so nervous about us breaking up, and I was aware of my own self-love, and I was aware that he wasn't responsible for my happiness. So there was lots of lessons that I was consciously taking into the relationship, but physiologically I hadn't created that safety. So I was still reliant on him to keep me safe, wanting him to just be on his best behaviour so that he wouldn't hurt me and all this kind of thing. And I was keeping a lot of it in, but occasionally I would tell him that, and you can watch the video of us talking about this, which we did recently. But I was anxious at the beginning, and I was nervous about him leaving, and I wasn't really fully being myself, was I? I was adjusting. So that went on for like a long time. That went on for a whole time. We went to all these different countries. We had this digital nomad life, and I was always thinking at the time, I just can't imagine him wanting to be in England and just stay in one place, which is what I wanted. I can't imagine that. So when's he going to do that? And I was kind of talking to my friend April, saying, can we manifest that he just wants to stay in England? And it seemed impossible at the time, because he was saying things like, I will never want to live in England. So I was sort of thinking, like, I did think to myself, yeah, right, you will one day. But, you know, I had to like let it unfold. But all the while, this lifestyle that I was living was starting to, well, it was fun. It was actually really fun at first. Like, we had so much fun. The two of us, we were like laughing all the time. And we were, you know, like just having such a journey. We had such an amazing time in Greece and in Morocco. Probably some of you saw the pictures. And it was just really fun. It felt like our life kept upgrading all the time, and we were like, whoa, what is happening? What have we created? But then there was a massive crash landing for me when I sort of had enough. I'd had enough of traveling. I just wanted to go home and create a base, but I didn't have the confidence to be able to say, right, I want to go home now, because that had never been the way round that it was. It had always been me like chasing and following him, not the other way round. So the thing was that I started getting anxious because I wanted things to change. And I also didn't have the confidence to know that he really loved me, because it wasn't me really that was showing up in the relationship. It was the version of me that was adjusting to him. So this was such a lesson, such a painful lesson to go through, that really was like, whoa, how are we going to get through this? And yeah, I had to start saying, I need to go home. I started saying it all the time. I really want to go home. I just want to go home. And it had always been put off and put off and put off until one day I just put my foot down and said, we're going home. I'm going home. Anyway, so either you're coming with me or not. And then it started, like, my focus shifted from me worrying about if he was going to leave me to me thinking, I just want to be happy again. I've realised that I'm actually not as happy as I thought I was, and you're not going to actually make me happy, and I need other things. I need other people, I need my life, I need my music, I need other stimulus in my life, and I have to go and create it. You are not going to make me happy on your own. And that's such a like massive crash landing to realise that this person that you've been obsessed about for so long, actually, when the honeymoon wears off and when you realise like who you are again, you realise, oh shit, like I'm with an imperfect person and I'm an imperfect person, and then you have to learn to love again. So anyway, long story short, we went on a big like journey, which, you know, we're still on really, of me learning to be me again, me learning to end codependency and be myself again, to reconnect to who I am and trust that I'm good enough no matter what, and trust that actually whatever's meant to be is meant to be. And so that's like what happened, and it literally has led me back to myself. It's led me back, the whole thing has led me back to me being my source of love and support, and us having a more balanced relationship. And it's just such an interesting, crazy, painful, beautiful journey. And honestly, it has not been easy. It's not been easy. And I know like a lot of you think, wow, I want what she's got, or they've got such an amazing relationship. But, you know, we have loads of great things in our relationship, but there has been so many difficult things too. Some of that, like the obsessiveness, the rumination, the fear, the anxiety, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And I hope that what you can do is take the message that you are the most important person. You're the most important person. Your needs matter. You're a priority. You don't have to adjust for anyone. You have to believe that you're enough without doing anything. And that's that. If anything, that's a good affirmation. Like, I'm enough exactly as I am, and there's nothing I need to do to prove it. Right? These affirmations can be useful because they put you in more of a state of a feeling where you're more directed to that being the truth. And if you do them enough, but not obsessively, but you start to change your state about who you believe you are. And that is what I believe is important. So I started putting myself first, started setting boundaries. I started really thinking, oh my God, I've got to do more things that are me. I've got to spend more time with other people, which was scary at first. But then all of my fear of abandonment started to go away. And I honestly, I don't have that anymore. I don't really have a fear of abandonment. And we've spent some time apart, actually, in order for us to have the separateness of remembering who we are on our own, which has been just so important for us, so important for me, so important for him. And guess what? As soon as I do this, as soon as I start saying yes to myself, he gets a really good job in England and really wants to stay. And I just, it's not really a coincidence, is it? It can't be. It can't be. I spent all that time waiting for him to do that for me and to meet my needs. And all I had to do was just say yes to myself. And that was it. It was really as simple as that. And in the process of me realising that I needed to find my own independence, my avoidance came up. So much of my own avoidance came up, where I started actually pushing him away and realising, oh God, he's actually not going anywhere. He's not going, no matter how much I think my unconscious mind is trying to get him away from me. Because I was really deeply afraid of opening my heart and letting myself be seen and loved and vulnerable, you know, from my own childhood stuff. I could see that he was actually just there, not going anywhere. All of the stuff that I'd imagined, like he's deeply committed to me, is true. You know, like it's crazy how much it turned around. It turned around so much, like as you can tell from the story, like beyond recognition. The other thing I did when I was in Italy, and still do now actually, is I had this note on my phone where I'd like call it my manifestation journal, where I'd like basically write down things that I wanted to hear him say or other people to say, and things that I wanted to happen. I literally just go through them now and like tick them off as they happen, and so many of them have happened. Like most of like there's still things that are happening and unfolding, but a lot of it now is like my state, like manifesting happiness, manifesting peace, manifesting tranquility, manifesting just joy. Those things are way more important to me now than the things themselves. Like I want him to say that he loves me more than anything and stuff. Like I just know that now, so I'm not really trying to like manifest that so much. I could go on and on and on and talk about this. There's literally so many parts and stories and mini stories within these stories that I haven't been able to fit into this video that are magical and amazing and you know, painful and human, that I'll leave for other videos maybe. But let me know what you think in the comments below. If you'd like to talk to me personally, I do have some one-to-one coaching packages available at the moment. I've had to limit my one-to-one coaching for now. It will open up again, but for now I'm really fully booked with the single sessions and things. But if you do really want to talk to me, you can send me a message through my website and I will get back to you, and maybe we can arrange something else. There's also my new course, Let Love In, which you will have direct access to me there as well. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.